Today, to kick things off, I think one of the things that I've noticed has been going on is, when a lot of us are honoring the stay-at-home order and we are at home all day, and some of us have people that can keep us company, and some of us don't. And ultimately, I think the common theme behind a lot of what some of the challenges are is around motivation, you know. And so let's talk a little bit about what motivation is about today. You know, at the end of the day, human beings need motivation to do everything. If you think about it, behind every action that we take, for example, me picking up this cup to drink, take a sip of tea, the motivation behind that is for me to wet my throat, so that and also kind of get some hydration in me. But at every level, anything that we do, anything that we say, anything that we think about, there is a motivational driver behind it. And so what I want to talk about today is to help us, first and foremost, understand a little bit how each and every single one of us are uniquely motivated. Because for those of you who don't know what it is that we do on my end in our company, is that we help entrepreneurs for a lot of times we help them get motivated or stay motivated doing what it is that we do. And the way we do that, and then what separates us from everybody else, is that we have actually a patented human assessment technology. Okay, and so before I dive even deeper into this, just like every week, I found it worked out really well last week, is that if you have any questions from the week before, if you have any questions about even the topic today, the science of motivation, go ahead and punch it into the Q&A box, so that way it can help guide our conversation today. The thing is, I can have topics such as the science of motivation, and unless, in order for me to kind of create a more customized experience for you, the sooner you can have any of your questions or any of your comments come up in the Q&A, the better we can cater this training for you. And what's so cool about this is, depending on who's on, every week could be a little bit different. So that being said, let's go back to talking about motivation. For those of you who are on right now, go ahead in the Q&A is put in a 1 if you, or actually put it in chat for now, but Q&A for questions, chat for just basically feedback. If you are, if you struggle with motivation at all, or have been struggling with motivation due to the current circumstances, put a 1 in the chat box. If you haven't been, and you've been able to keep yourself motivated getting things done, then put a 0 in the chat box. Okay. There's no wrong or right answer. It's just about honesty, right? Okay, good. I see it's pretty even right now. It's 50-50. So that's not bad. Okay, so a lot of 1s. I myself have been struggling also sometimes a couple days with just a couple moments with motivation as well. Fortunately, I know what my unique motivational drivers are. And so going back to what separates us from, how we're able to get such significant results from our students and clients, is because we have this patented human assessment technology. It has about 20 years of research behind it that literally helps us uncover every human being's unique operating manual. More importantly, their unique motivational drivers. Okay. For those of you who haven't read that book yet, Drive by Daniel H. Pink. When I do these trainings, when Nikki has me come over to the South Bay Association Realtors office, and I do these annual trainings with you guys, I bring that up. I bring Daniel H. Pink's book on Drive. And so let's talk in more real day terms, in terms of why it's so important to understand what your unique motivational drivers are. Because like I was saying, behind every action, every thought, every movement we make, every utterance that we make, there is a motivational driver. Believe it or not, when you reach over to pick up that remote to turn on the TV, there is a motivational driver in play. Now, we don't think about it because it's a no-brainer and it's unconscious and it doesn't, it's effortless, okay? And the key thing here is that it's effortless. So there are things that we do in life that are effortless. And despite those effortless actions we take, there's still a motivational driver to drive us to take that action. Imagine being able to tap into that so that everything else that you do want to do in life doesn't have to be such a willful project, so to speak. Doesn't have to be a willful act. It could be just as effortless as picking up your remote and turning on the TV. Imagine what that would be like that when you set a goal and you get up in the morning and you want to get yourself motivated to do something for work, do something for the family, do something for the home, do something for your health, that it could be as effortless as switching on Netflix and watching a movie. That's the type of motivational mastery that we're talking about here. That's what we're going to be discussing today. And to understand how to tap into that, we need to understand a little bit more about the science behind what drives us as human beings, what makes us tick. See, in the book, Daniel H. Pink makes reference to Maslow, who was this behavioral sociologist guy from way back when. And he postulated that, is it possible that human beings can be are a little bit more complex than rats? Because they were basing a lot of their studies around motivation, around how rats responded to stimuli or to cheese or food or being able to solve a maze. And they basically found that, oh, okay, well, if a rat can be motivated by dangling a goal or dangling a chunk of cheese in a different direction and it'll go towards it, then that's how we get motivated too. And that's how a lot of businesses, and that's how many of us are still motivating ourselves. We're giving ourselves either a motivation. Now, they also motivated rats by using like a shock mechanism to get them to move. And so that's what we would like to call motivation 2.0. So motivation 1.0 was back in the day, was fear driven, right? If there was what motivated us to move or do things was fear of death, fear of being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. That's motivation 1.0. At least we were able to evolve past that through the sociologists and behavioralists from back in the day and say that, well, if we give something more attractive in front of us. So we call that the stick and carrot motivator. Okay, stick is when there's a pain motivator to get us moving. Carrot is when you dangle a carrot and say in front of like a donkey or something like that, or a horse, and then they move towards it. Okay. Well, Maslow postulated that, maybe human beings aren't just motivated that way. Because here's the thing, is that how many of us have ever gone to a job and after a certain point you were excited in the beginning because you were going to make more money than you made before and you were going to do something new, and then you go to work, and after a few years go by, if you don't get a raise, but you're still making the money more than you made before, for some reason the motivation wanes. Okay, if we were simply rats chasing after cheese, then how would that suddenly become a problem? The cheese is still there, right? And so Maslow postulated maybe there's a little bit more to that. And what he found through his studies, that this is what we call motivation 3.0. Okay, I'm going to get us to motivation 4.0 in a moment, but motivation 3.0 was that there were three major factors in the human makeup that actually allowed us to tap into limitless motivation. Okay. And this was geared towards leaders of organization, but it absolutely applies to the solopreneur or the entrepreneur to get themselves motivated and to kind of take a look at what you are structuring in your life as an infrastructure to get yourself going every single day. Okay. So for those of you who are taking notes, you want to write down these three major components of what gets people motivated, what keeps us motivated. Okay. For those of you who have read the book Drive by Daniel H. Pink, I would, maybe this is a good reminder for you. Okay. First and foremost, one of the things that keeps us going is autonomy. Okay. Out of the three things that ultimately drive human beings from one day to the next, one project to the next, one goal to the next, and keep us motivated, especially for those of you who have team members or employees, keep them motivated, is to provide a high level of autonomy. The ability to make decisions, the ability to be able to freely decide on your own how to make your best decisions moving forward. Now, most of us who are solopreneurs and entrepreneurs in the world of real estate, there's an infinite amount of autonomy. As you scale your business, as you bring other team members on, you want to keep in mind to keep them motivated, to keep them in, is not about money. Okay. Money can only keep them motivated for so long, as many of us have experienced ourselves. It is a level of autonomy, the ability to be able to make their own decisions for what? For them to go to the next point, which is to create purpose in their workplace, purpose in their life. Okay, there needs to be a purpose. Without a purpose, human beings will start to kind of just run around in circles all day and become disengaged and unmotivated. Okay. Now, beyond purpose, okay, so there's autonomy and there's purpose. Okay, the next level after that, with everything that's going on, that autonomy also gives you and your team members the ability to master some aspect of their life, to create mastery. For years, I thought that once I was done with school, I was so done. I was so burnt out from school after I was done that I wanted nothing to do with school. I didn't even want to pick up a book. I didn't want to do anything that came close to thinking about studying. And for a few years, I did that, and I found that there was something missing in my life. And as the first year progressed, second year progressed, third year progressed, I found myself not feeling stupider, but almost felt like I was getting dumber. But not because I was literally getting dumb. It was because I stopped trying to master things in my life. And the big switch was, wait a minute, school was just a discipline for me. But really, what I wanted to do was to learn things on my own terms, autonomy and mastery, and with a purpose. And from that, when the switch flipped, it set me on a whole new journey on learning things about life, learning things about myself, learning how to master myself on this road of life, to master my purpose. And as the years went on, I realized part of the biggest reasons why I was able to continue to persevere and push forward and accomplish these goals was because I was constantly trying to master something new, whether it be a new hobby, whether it be a new piece of technology, whether it be getting the lighting right in my videos. I don't know. I mean, there was always something. And that's what I love about social media and the world that we live in today, is that at any given moment, if there was something I felt like I wanted to master, think about the last time you were curious about something and you were interested in something, and you went YouTube diving to go down to figure out and learn something new, even about, I guess there's this big thing where everybody's cooking at home and creating new recipes, okay? Think about what that is. It's about mastering a new skill. It's mastering a new aspect to see what the vehicle of self is capable of still. Okay, this is how we keep ourselves engaged. Okay, this is the sociological, psychological aspect of it. I'm about to step into the science and the physiological and the structural side of motivation, but those three things, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, okay, are the three key components of how you maintain motivation in a limitless fashion. If you are able to structure your life so that you have a high level of autonomy, you're constantly looking on mastering something, and you have a very clear idea what that purpose is, motivation should not be a problem. When we struggle with motivation, yet we're still doing things and getting things done to the day, you may want to step back and say, okay, what am I missing at this moment? Am I missing some level of autonomy? Am I missing some level am I not trying to master something in this moment and not trying to figure things out and not trying to learn something new? Is there a lack of purpose in the things that I do every single day? Am I just doing things for the sake of doing it without a clear idea what that purpose is? Now, oftentimes that is also a function that when autonomy, mastery, and purpose starts to drop off, it often is a function of the fact that a lot of us grow up being taught and trained and sold a bill of goods on what we need to do to motivate ourselves. What we found in our work studying behind this patented technology, 20 years of research, is through the data we found in general, there are actually 12 different motivators, okay, that human beings have access to. In order for us to thrive and continue to be able to do well, however, we can't use all 12 all the time, because those particular drivers have a direct correlation to the number of voices in our head in terms of the chatter. The more drivers we access out of the 12, in fact, if you try to access all 12, your head will probably explode and you'll go crazy, which has happened to people. The reality is what we found an efficient and optimal way of being able to motivate ourselves is finding out the 2 main drivers out of the 12 that each of us are uniquely designed to access. And everybody accesses the drivers in a different way, in a unique way. Okay. The science behind it is nuclear forces. Okay. Our inventor, Dr. Zana Hackett, behind the scenes, developing this technology, this algorithm, through her data points, PhD with an emphasis in quantum physics and human behavioral sciences. What she found was that what truly drives human beings on a scientific level, on a nature's level, are nuclear forces. She realized and she found out through her research that the nuclear forces that exist within each and every single one of our living bodies have a direct impact into how each of us are motivated. What I'm going to do right now, as I'm talking about the science behind this, as I go deeper into this, is I want to present the 12 main motivators, the 12 motivators that each and every single one of us has access to. That way you can, as I'm reading through this, or as I'm listing them off because I've memorized it, but you can actually start to think about and write down 2, 3, maybe at most 4 different drivers that resonate with you and make sense to you, that it's actually part of your driver. And how you know that is when I mention it and I talk about it and I discuss it, that you feel an energy to it. You feel a resonance to it. You feel like excited about it. Okay. So I'm going to just list them off real quick before I dive in deeper around the drivers on. And the purpose about me sharing this with you is so that this week you can start to look into the different ways that you are uniquely driven. You can almost like think about letting go what everybody else tells you of how you can get motivated per se based on someone else's model, and think about how you uniquely feel when you're using one of these motivators. Okay. So the first motivator is called initiating change. Those who are motivated by this are driven and motivated by creating transformation, like doing landscaping, knocking down a wall, moving things around a house, tearing down walls and building a new extension to the home. Big, huge changes where the ultimate goal that feeds this driver is seeing the transformation, okay? There are people who are driven like this, okay? Fear is to see the transformation, okay? The second motivator, okay, that I want to list off here is called creating order, okay? Creating order is for those that are thrive on systems and routines and processes, creating checklists, not necessarily doing or checking off the checklist or executing check, but creating the checklist, creating systems and processes for your business, creating routines for your life. Those who are motivated by this thrive in having a routine in the morning, thrive in having a routine all day, thrive in having a routine at night. Okay. And it's not about being like, anal about things or anything like that, or being OCD about things. I think that's a better term instead of anal. It's about what drives that individual. And so what happens is if you find out some of these drivers will actually are what motivate you or what drives you, what you want to do is you want to start to take ownership of it and start to realize how many times in life have people told you that you shouldn't be that way, or you shouldn't be, you're too OCD about things, when in fact it actually excites you to create lists. It excites you to create these things, to create a sense of order in your life. Those that have creating order struggle with chaotic meetings. Why? Because chaotic meetings are out of order. Okay. So to follow up with that, there is a driver called perseverance. Okay. Perseverance is for those that do like to check things off. Okay, so believe it or not, there are people who love to create checklists, but checking off and executing the task is really not their thing. There are those, the perseverance driver is that driver that is all about checking things off. It's all about getting things done. It's all about being able to move things forward in life. And when they're not able to move things forward in life, be able to check those things off. And an easy way to see if that excites you, if this is one of your drivers, is notice how you feel when you check things off the checklist. Okay, it's like a little jolt of energy. Their nuclear forces in a strong state gets jolted, and then you cross it off and you're like, oh my God, that feels good. Oh my God, that feels good. If that happens to you, then you are most likely having perseverance as one of your drivers. Okay. So that's the third driver. Fourth driver is what we call creating protection. A lot of that is going on right now. A lot of first responders, people in the military are driven by creating protection. And that's all about safety. It's all about feeling safe, making sure that people that you love and care about are safe. That's what drives individual with the creating protection driver. Okay. Creating protection driver often gets confused by other people by being paranoid, when in fact they're just being extremely thorough. Okay, if you find yourself making sure that you, first place you look when you check into a hotel is see where all the exits are for the fire escape. Okay, and then after exploring all the different ways that you can make sure that you're safe in case something happens, and you feel better and you get energized, then you most likely are driven by creating protection. Okay. The next one is what I like to call the money gene. There's actually a driver specifically related to money, okay, or the concept of money. More importantly, the flow of money, energy flow, okay, inflow, outflow, movement. We call it monetary discernment because those with that driver are particularly adept when it comes to understanding the way money functions as an energy component. Okay, doesn't mean that if you don't have money as a driver that you can't make a lot of money. You know, I have a client that makes, you know, millions, and he doesn't have monetary discernment as a driver. In fact, it's actually pretty low. He's driven by creating protection and actually taking care of those that he loves and cares about, and he uses that, taps into that to elevate his business to the next level. So it's a misnomer to think that just because you don't have a monetary discernment driver doesn't mean you can't make money. You just make money in different ways. Those that do have monetary discernment, the way you understand if this is a driver, that it excites you to turn over closets. It excites you to get rid of old stuff and bring in new stuff. It actually excites you to see money flow from one bucket to another. In other words, leaving money sit still and not do anything and not seeing money flow in or out. Okay, you intrinsically understand in order to make money, you need to spend money. Those with monetary discernment have that natural drive, natural understanding that's built into their physiology. Okay. So that's monetary discernment. The next one is called spontaneity. This is where genius lives, people who think outside of the box. If you thrive in creativity, if you thrive in thinking out of the box, if you've often been kind of like looked at funny when you introduce an idea and people think that you're crazy for thinking that way, or crazy to think that's even possible, okay? It's that really, really out of the box thinking that sometimes only you understand. We call that the spontaneity driver, okay? Those who have this driver thrive in being able to sit by themselves and create and think out of the box, play with ideas, and their mind is constantly in motion. This is the driver where the mind is constantly, literally like swinging like a seesaw, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, okay? And that's okay. And that's normal. It actually needs to, like a grandfather clock with a pendulum, actually needs to stay in motion for this driver to stay healthy, okay? The next driver is called optimism, okay? Optimism driver, okay, is the fun driver. It's the inner child, okay? Not everybody has that, but it's funny when I talk about this. When I talk about optimism, the interesting thing is a lot of people think everybody should be optimistic. Not true, not real, not what do you call? Not what is it? Not real, not anyway. To expect everybody to have optimism is not a realistic expectation, because not everybody is driven by optimism. Believe it or not. Ripley's. No, not Ripley's. Okay, so think about that for a moment as I talk about optimism. Thinking about how many times have we come across somebody who isn't optimistic and we try to force them to be optimistic? See, this is how society and our culture squashes our ability to stay motivated in this lifetime. Shireen, to answer your question, autonomy, purpose, and mastery. Mastery is the third one, okay? So optimism is that those that have access to this are constantly looking at the possibilities of things. Affirmations actually work with you. Talking with people who are positive and forward thinking and think about the possibilities and everything like that, that's what optimism driver is for. Those that like to have fun, like to make fun, those that seemingly never ever grow up, okay? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with not having the optimism driver as a driver. You don't need to be optimistic to create success in this lifetime. You just have to be driven in different ways. Allow yourself to be driven in the way you're naturally driven. Okay, remember, all you need are two from these 12 different motivators that I'm listing out to be successful and to create motivation in a limitless way. Okay. The next one is called humility after optimism. It's called humility. The humility driver is probably the most egoless driver out of all the drivers. It is what makes people who are driven by this don't need to stand up and speak. Don't need to. They're actually the most humble people on the planet because they are great listeners. They have the ability, natural ability to hold space for people and what drives them is being able to hold that space for people, being able to have that intimate one-on-one type of conversation. Those with a humility driver don't do well standing on stage talking to a lot of people. They actually thrive in having more intimate conversations to create more intimate environments where there's like 1, 3, maybe 5 people at most, maybe 10 even, and then being able to hold space for those people to be able to listen, to be able to engage on that level. Okay, humility driven, those who are driven by the humility driver thrive in that type of dynamic. Okay, they also thrive in being able to find that harmonious balance of spending time with people and spending time alone. The humility driver are those interesting, unique individuals that are both extroverted and introverted, because any extreme on both sides will actually exhaust that individual. So we should let go of the bucket now that am I introverted or extroverted? You might be both. You could be both extroverted and introverted, and finding that harmonious balance between the two is actually what feeds this particular driver. Okay. After humility driver, there is what we call the accomplishment driver. Okay. Those that are driven by this set massively huge goals. Okay. And in the strength of this driver, it's all about accomplishing big projects, not just little daily tasks, but like the bigger accomplishments in life. The tendency for those driven by this are to set really, really lofty goals that are seemingly unreachable. And as long as you're able to reach it with this driver, then that driver will be fed. If you can't reach it, then that driver won't be fed and it'll put you in what we call a weak state, which I will talk about in a moment. Okay, the next one after that is what we call the compassion driver. Those who have the compassion driver are completely driven by being able to take care of another living thing, be it plant, animal, or people. Okay, and when you're able to take care of another living thing, it actually feeds you. To be able to do something for somebody else, to be able to do something for a pet, to be able to nurture a garden and make it grow, feeds this particular driver. This driver is all about taking care of others. Okay, and I'm doing so. Okay, one of the ways that, so I didn't know this about one of my ex-girlfriends, and I was totally starving her from feeding this driver, because every time, because I'm a pretty independent guy, and every time she wanted to help me out with something and says, hey, can I help you with this? Can I help you with this? I'm like, no, I got it. Because she's driven by being able to take care of another human being, by me saying, no, I've got it, I was literally starving that driver of hers, which then thrust her into a weak state. And when she's in a weak state, she's not feeding herself properly, and motivation starts to wane, and life becomes a struggle. When we don't feed our drivers in the strength of it, not only are we not able to access the autonomy, purpose, and mastery of it all, but we start to lose the ability to stay motivated. Okay. Okay, so that's compassion. Okay, so the next one is called the traveler. It's called varietal. It's what we call the traveler. For those of us who have wanderlust tendencies and love to travel, there's a possibility that you are driven by this one. This one is actually the antithesis of creating order. This one is for those individuals who do not thrive in order systems and routines, but rather has a different variety in daily life. Driving, taking a different route home every single day, trying a different restaurant every single week, okay, doing things that are different every single time, traveling to a different place, traveling on a regular basis. Those of us who have this as a driver, it is important to embrace the fact that you need variety in your life. And so for those that have the traveler driver and are buying into these bullet books, or buying into creating systems and process and routines around your life, then there's a reason why you feel exhausted every single day trying to live a routine life. Those who have the traveler driver actually do not do well in a routine life. How does that then translate in working business, some people ask? Well, it's interesting because then you have a very creative business that no 2 days are ever alike, and that's okay. You can create some order and systems around feeding this need to have variety in your life. So you can create buckets of time where you do something different every single day so that that part of you can be fed so you can actually get things done. Okay, very important. So hopefully you, at this point, you start to understand the importance of understanding what your unique drivers are. Okay, so there's one more driver left. I've already gone through 11. There's one more, and it's called aesthetic sensibility. Those who are driven by this are driven by the beauty in the world, being able to see beauty, being able to create beauty, being able to present, being able to share your knowledge, being able to teach and train and being able to, take your gifts and be able to offer it to the world. Okay, because what feeds this driver is the byproduct of all those different things, and the byproduct of all those things is called warranted acknowledgement. Those who have the aesthetic sensibility driver actually need attention to survive in this world, and not attention in a self-absorbed way, because that would be the weak state of this driver, but the attention as a byproduct of what you do. For those of you who speak, those of you who engage and have this aesthetic sensibility as a driver, okay, when people pay attention to you, when people actually engage with you as a result of your presentation and you feel fed, if you ever have done a presentation and when you're done, you feel like you're walking on cloud nine and you're like on a natural high, most likely you have aesthetic sensibility as a driver. When you buy beautiful clothing, new items for yourself. In my particular case, when I actually have this as one of my drivers. When I buy new technology and I get to play with gadgets, and because for me that's a piece of beauty, right? I write poetry. Every time I write a piece of poetry, it feeds this driver because it's creating a form of beauty in this world. Whether or not anybody even pays attention to it, this is how we do it. For those that beat themselves up for looking in the mirror, even though you find yourself drawn to look in the mirror, and make sure everything presents okay, that you're going to present well when you walk out into the world, that is a function of feeding the aesthetic sensibility driver. Okay, so those are the 12 drivers that each of us have potential access to. The key is to find out what two drivers, as a pilot and a co-pilot, are meant to drive you. Because each of those drivers feed your nuclear forces that need to be fed every single day. So the nuclear forces in our body are like fuel for our physical body to stay alive. The nuclear forces, if you remember through school, exhibit strong states and weak states. Yes, with every one of these drivers, there's a strong state and a weak state. So when any of us are hungry, angry, lonely, tired, disappointed, any of those things, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, okay, we call that HALT. It's derived from the 12-step program for the Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's still relevant. Hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. It will increase the possibility of us going into the weak state of any of our drivers. And when we're in the weak state of our drivers, there is a different set of behavioral patterns that exhibit. You will notice that when any of us are hangry or grouchy or tired or whatever it is at the end of the day, not everybody like expresses the same way. And the reason why is because we're expressing through the weak states of our own unique combination of these 12 drivers. Okay. So hopefully you got a chance to write those down as I went through. Hopefully you got a chance to understand a little bit about what Daniel H. Pink talked about with automation, purpose, and mastery. Okay. And what I want to do right now, it's a lot of information that I just spit out in the last 30 minutes, but hopefully you guys got a bit of an idea to know what to work on, identified like maybe 2, 3, or 4 different drivers that resonate with you so that you could start to explore this week how to feed those particular drivers to help you stay motivated throughout the week. So let's go ahead and open up for questions. Let me see what we got here. Don't think being optimistic is not wanting to grow up. Okay, so when I talk about optimism, Tessie, it's not about not wanting to grow up. And it's interesting that's mentioned. It's, you know, if you have a trigger around being asked to grow up, then most likely there's a little bit of optimism that's a driver in you. Okay. Optimistic is driven by that inner child. There is a part of us, and optimism is seeing the possibilities of things. If you think back to when you were little and you looked at life and wonderment, okay, most of the times we see that level, that exuberance as children. Okay. Now, just because an adult doesn't have access to optimism and they don't have access to that doesn't mean that they can't succeed in life. Okay. I'm just talking about optimism as a driver is that inner child looking at the world in wonderment. Okay. If what I'm saying is not wanting to grow up is a trigger, then there may be a potential trigger around the fact that there's optimism there that has been squashed. See, what happens is to get the optimism into a weak state is when we allow someone or something, usually it's someone, to squash our optimism. And when the optimism is squashed, it will go into a weak state. And the weak state is often expressed in a form of immaturity. Okay, that's what we call the weak state of the optimism. So there's a strong state and a weak state. So if you're driven by optimism, in the strength, it's called optimism. In the weak state, if you're not able to feed that optimism and someone squashes on you, if we allow someone to squash on you, because nobody can squash your optimism unless you let them, you potentially fall into the weak state of called immaturity. Okay. And that's how we know through our research and studies that, oh, okay, it's that inner child that some of us basically have never really grown out of. And that's what feeds this optimism to kind of see like, oh my God, seeing the wonderment of, seeing the possibility of things. Okay. Think back to children, how they see that anything is possible. As we get up and when we become adults, we all of a sudden don't see as everything is possible. We start to introduce the possibility of impossibility, improbability. Okay, we start to be kind of like conditioned out of dreaming. Okay, and that's what the optimism driver. It's all about the dreamer inside each and every single one of us. Okay, we all have a little bit of access to it. Not everybody has access to it as a massive driver. Okay, Shireen goes, if having a work partner, co-practice owner who functions on drivers that are the polar opposite of my own, would that be considered complementary or unproductive, assuming that the two colleagues understand those attributes about themselves and each other? Fantastic question, Shireen. So here's the thing. Yes, it is absolutely possible, and it's usually the case when you have conflict in the workplace, or sometimes headbutting moments, is when you have either what do you call conflicting drivers. For example, just like I was talking about, the creating order versus the traveler driver, right? If they're both in the workplace, what the creating order wants system routines every single day, the traveler wants to do something different every single day. Yes, there's a potential headbutting moment that will arise from that. Now, if both colleagues understand these attributes about themselves, then what we can then do and have and are not in a hungry, angry, lonely, tired state, and can actually be in the strength of it all in that moment, having that discussion, you can create what we call strategies of success. You can understand how to create unique roles for each of you inside that team dynamic, so that you can capitalize on the strength of both of your drivers in the context of work, in the context even of home and relationships. Okay, for those of you who are now thinking about, I wonder how my partner is driven at home. Okay, being able to understand that we have saved so many marriages and turned so many marriages around. Okay, because simply by helping them understand how each of them are uniquely driven, because every human being is driven in a uniquely different way. There's an infinite amount of combinations, because beyond that, on a deeper level, once we find out what the particular drivers are, there's also a volume level. It's a mathematical equation and algorithm that we have, so we can actually see the different volume of expression, which also then impacts how you uniquely express when you're in the strength of your driver, as opposed, and as also when you're in the weak state of your drivers. So it's a fascinating thing. And ever since we've had this technology kind of infused into the work that we do, it's completely turned it all around. The level of efficiency, the level of expediency that we can help our clients get results has been through the roof. And so I wanted to share this with you today to start giving you guys, a new perspective on how you actually can be motivated in a limitless fashion, in an effortless way. Basically look at where you have automation, purpose, and mastery incorporated in the infrastructure of your daily living in both business and life. And then start to explore and try, look into yourself and understand what is it excites me about these 12 drivers, and find 2 to 4 of them that will then, you can then start to kind of feed on a daily basis. Start to structure your daily activities to feed your drivers so that you can create that limitless possibilities in terms of the staying motivated from one day to the next, from 1 week to the next, from 1 month and from 1 year to the next, and on for the rest of your life. Okay. Any other questions? Yes? No? Maybe so? Okay. If there are no more questions, let me see here. There's nothing in chat either. Is Nikki still there? I think we are done then. So,
I am here. Did you look at the Q&A?
I looked at the Q&A. I actually addressed Thessie's, Shireen's, and Claudia said, thank you, you're welcome. And I addressed all the questions, yeah. And if there are any other questions that show up throughout
below it?
Huh?
You got all the ones below those too?
Oh, no, I didn't. Oh my gosh, why didn't it scroll earlier? Sorry. Okay, how can I organize my drivers such as compassion and humility? Okay, cool. If that's okay, I can keep going. Let's see, Elizabeth goes, how can I organize my drivers such as compassion and humility? I'm not quite sure what you mean by organize your drivers, but more importantly, I think the question is, how can I feed my drivers when it comes to compassion and humility? Compassion is all about taking another living thing. So one of the easiest ways is this, is like years ago, we had a empty nester that lost their partner. And the kids were wondering, how do I keep my dad motivated? How do I keep my dad happy? And basically asked him, we noticed that he had the compassion driver. It says, get him a pet. Okay, those are the compassion driver actually do really well taking care of a pet to a certain degree. Depends on what kind of pet, and depends on what level of alchemy you are, which is a whole different thing we can discuss later. Okay, compassion is all about being able to take care of another living thing. So Elizabeth, reaching out to somebody and say, hey, is there anything I could do for you to do this? A lot of that has been going on right now with people reaching out and taking care of others during these times. Being able to do that for you actually feeds you. Being able to put something to those who are compassion drivers that are creating masks for people and giving them to people, it actually feeds a variety of different drivers. But more importantly, being able to take care of another living thing, another human being, feeds that compassion driver. Humility is about finding that harmonious balance and spending time with people and spending time alone. If you spend too much time alone, it'll take you into the weak state. The weak state is basically neglect, okay? And spending too much time with people will actually also throw you into the weak state of neglect. So it's that harmonious balance of spending time with people, spending time alone. If you have humility as a driver, think about those times where you're able to find that balance of spending time with people and say, I think it's time for me to go home. You go home, spend time alone, shut the door, be one with the environment, okay? That's what the humility driver is all about. Claudia goes, monetary discernment. Can you say a little more about this? Thinking a lot about money, escaping fear of economic insecurity would not be this motivator, I gather. It could potentially be the weak state of monetary discernment. So the weak state of monetary discernment, if you're not able to feed this driver, in other words, if you're not able to create flow in your life, a high level of flow state, inflow, outflow, okay? And not just money related, but in terms of thoughts, in terms of things, turning over your closet, getting rid of old things, doing spring cleaning on a regular basis, even if it's not spring, that feeds that driver into strength. If it is not fed into strength, it can go into the weak state, which is actually the reverse of flow, which is worrying about money, hoarding money, resentful thoughts, hoarding thoughts, thinks, emotions, and perceptions on things, okay? So that would be that. Now, fear is a different driver, the weak state of a different driver, okay? Fear is, so it could be a combination of the two, but monetary discernment is really the weak state is worrying about money, okay? And when then all of a sudden you're holding on to things and not letting it go. And holding on to things, not just money, but also thoughts and emotions and things, okay? That's the weak state of that, okay? Let's see. And I think, okay, cool. And I think that's all of them, right? Yeah, I think I answered. Any other questions? Yeah, this is a huge piece. When we do our results session and our assessments for our clients and our students and everything, one of the things, there tends to be a ton of information. Imagine what it's like to suddenly see your entire operating manual of self, you know, what your drivers are, what your traits are, what your communication styles are, what your relational alchemy is. All those different things gets revealed in that technology. Oftentimes, our students and clients get a little bit overwhelmed. It's like, where do I start? And so the reason why I want to talk about drivers today is because I always say, start with your drivers. Start with mastering your drivers. Start with understanding yourself on that intimate level, what drives you one day to the next. Because it not only gives you motivation to get things done, it keeps your body alive when you feed in a healthy way, when you feed it in the strength. When you feed your drivers in the strength, it's akin to going to the store and buying good, healthy, organic food and feeding yourself good food. When you reach for that bag of potato chips, okay, that is a function of feeding your drivers in the weak state, feeding yourself junk food. And though it may fill you up in that moment, in the long run, it doesn't do well because you're giving yourself funky, bad energy. If you eat like that guy from Super Size Me, if you eat junk food in McDonald's every single day, eventually what happens? Your body breaks down. This is the same concept. Being masterful with your motivational drivers is key to maintaining a high level of health, high level of productivity, and maintain low level of chatter in your mind so you can have clarity and make the best decisions in your life. Okay, so it's beyond just staying motivated. It's about maintaining an optimized lifestyle as well. So that's the impact of motivational drivers. And that's this week's.
I think that you got one more question.
Okay. Humility to me is understanding your success, modestly expressing your achievement. I am confused and is not spending too much time with others. Okay. So one thing the languaging that we use, you want to kind of let go of colloquial language that we've been taught from a Webster's definition standpoint. Okay. It's not, we call it humility because of its nature of expression. Okay. What happens is we tend to get a little bit too adult in how we define certain things in life. And so with the humility driver, what we want to start thinking about is that what does that look like when we see someone behaving with a high level of humility? Okay. Understating your success. So it's interesting because, okay, now I want to look at some of the language that is being chosen here to express. Okay, Festy, so it's interesting if you don't mind. Humility to me is understating your success. What does that mean specifically when you understate your success? What is the driver to understate your success? Okay, define that because that's a really important thing. The choice of language in this particular is fascinating to me because understating isn't always what we call the most positive language, if you will. It can be. But it just depends on how one defines it. So I want to know from your individual definition what understating actually means, because colloquially, understating tends to have a variety of different charges, if you will. Modestly expressing your achievement. Again, want to see what is driving the language choices around here on modestly expressing your achievement. Okay, if you have achieved something, if you're honestly about it, you achieved it. If you achieve success as you define it to be, okay, because understating your success, meaning like if it's your success, as we talked about last week, defining success on your own terms is key to this particular statement. Understanding your success as defined by somebody else, or understanding success as you define it, okay? But humility really has less to do with that. Humility, you know, as we define it with the drivers, is about that behavior of not really needing to stand out, not really needing to be that. And the reason what drives that is that there is a part of that individual that, you know, can't spend too much time with people because they get overwhelmed, like sensory overload, okay? And then there is a need actually to spend time alone to re-energize and to rejuvenate. Okay, that's what we mean. Each of these definitions is not a Webster-based definition. It's based on what we notice as a behavioral pattern. So one of the things that needs to be released and dissociated is the need to define what I'm saying. I'm describing the humility as we see it through the eyes of the technology that we have, and then kind of like separate what society or our culture has defined humility to be. Because here's the challenge with that is that depending on the generation, most commonly used English words are redefined, okay? The swear words that we use today that are so charged about 100 years ago meant nothing, okay? And as culture and society decided to adopt different things, pop culture even, if you will, we create what we call an urban definition of these of different kinds of language. So when we are using humility to define this, we're not talking about from a textbook Webster definition. We're defining it based on a set of behavioral patterns that exhibit a strong state and a weak state. The weak state of humility being, of course, is that they're not being fed enough, that you go and neglect your self needs, then neglect others, neglect everything about life in general. And that's a weak state in an extreme case of the humility driver. Okay, so there's a lot more to that, but the crux of it all is basically that we don't go by the Webster's definition of it because we're basing on the definition describing a particular behavior pattern. What I would recommend, what we would challenge you to do, Thessie, is take understating your success, modestly expressing your achievement, and take those two words maybe this week and kind of look at it, what you mean by that, how you define each of those words, because I have a sneaking suspicion that embedded within how you're deciding to choose that combination of language, you will find an opportunity to see that there may be a few beliefs underneath that may be the key to unlocking your ability to achieve the next level of success in your life, to go to that next level, to get past whatever may be holding you back from a higher level of success, and make sure you define what success means to you too. So, okay, great. Saw it, got it. Any other questions?
I think that's it.
All righty, cool.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone. Have a good week.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Bye.